Hello, beautiful people. I am Oliver Perrin for Semiagog, and welcome to the House live stream, during which I will revisit the subject of house and household and discuss things like intergenerational dialogue and fostering. And I will also, at the outset, be reading count them three, ladies and gentlemen, opinion pieces, which I solicited from viewers. And I got three that I thought made it over the finish line into being acceptable. One from Britain, a viewer in the UK, one from New Zealand, a viewer there, and one from a fellow who did not specify a home country, but I'll be reading all three. Then I will be going into discussing house and household, really an extension to that topic. Again, intergenerational dialogue and fostering. And then after that, we'll do some Q&A. This will at least run until 11, maybe to midnight. So that's about the size and shape of it, people. I want to apologize for folks who came to the channel thinking that the live hangout was about to start. I said it with a 10 p.m. start time, but you know, boomer tech, what can I say? My apologies to everyone who is waiting and just sort of watching sands fall through the hourglass. But now we are started. Before I read these three opinion pieces, if you will, that I solicited, I do want to ask everyone, check to make sure you are subscribed. The YouTube bitches continue to unsubscribe people from my channel, people who did not wish, presumably, to be unsubscribed, and yet it has happened. So make sure you are subscribed and occasionally check and make sure that it's the case, because YouTube's cutting everybody out. Click the bell for notifications. Thanks, as always, to channel supporters who are helping out through Subscribestar and GoFundMe. All of the credit and none of the blame. Thank you all very much. Also, I was supposed to record with Mr. Tim yesterday, I believe. Yeah, Tuesday. And he was not feeling well. He's fine. There is no crisis of any sort, but he did not at the time feel like recording. So I'm going to have to reschedule with him. Lots to talk about with Mr. Tim. Hopefully we will be able to do that soon. And he sends his best wishes to all. All right, so first off, we are going to look at these opinion pieces real quick. What are these opinion pieces? Well, I figured, you know, everyone's listening to me, so why not give some of my viewers a chance to be heard? And if any of you are interested in these opinion pieces, send me your thoughts. Please do try to write them up well. I'm going to be kind of bitchy or particular, I should say more accurately, about being sure that the material is good. So, you know, I want to make sure that it is all like it ought to be. And that is because I want pieces that are going to be interesting for viewers and are not going to bore the hell out of them. These three are the first ones I've gotten. So yeah, if you're interested, you can email me your written piece. Try to keep it coherent, have a solid flow of ideas, try to make it interesting, amusing, informative, entertaining, heartfelt, whatever, however that may be. All those things, try to make sure that they apply to whatever it is you write and send to me. Send them to the email address semiagog@gmail.com. And let me just look to make sure no one is saying that they're unable to hear me. Okay, it looks like this is all working well. And hello to Zed Dez. I think Zed Dez kindly sent me some information on milk brotherhood type things in Islam. And I was trying to find that damn link because I go into that a bit, but I'm gonna have to look into it more. Thanks, Zed Dez. I think that was you. So anyway, opinion pieces. Yes, we've got three. The first one comes to us from the UK. I'm only going to use first names. This is from Philip, who writes, on the night of his election, the bias against Trump was palpable. All the mainstream media were getting ready to celebrate the great Hillary Clinton victory. They had just known that Donald Trump was going to be absolutely annihilated. All their polls had told them so, hadn't they? All their political pundits, they had said so too. The Democrats already had their venue all set up to celebrate her great victory, celebrate her great Roman triumph. I could see all of those hundreds and hundreds of balloons lurking up there in the dark, near to the ceiling of that vast hall that they were going to use. All those balloons were just waiting up there to be released at just that right victory moment. No doubt, when the saintly Hillary Clinton had strode up upon the dais with both arms raised high above her bouffant blonde head in a great victory salute, and now proclaiming the start of a new world era. But they had all been hoisted by their own petards, so to speak. All those hundreds and hundreds of balloons were destined to stay up there forever, never to be released. I wonder what happened to them afterwards. Are they still up there? By now wizened and shrunken and shriveled up like mummies, and now gathering dust and cobwebs? Or were they removed? Were they popped before they were taken away from the hall? Surely they wouldn't have put them into the dumper trucks, still inflated. And who had actually done the taking down and the popping? Was it Democratic Party activist grunts, or was it the Latino hired help? I wonder if any of Hillary Clinton's close circle were there to hear the popping of their dreams. If she had been there to see it done, I might have even admired her. Frederick the Great, he would have been there to see it done. Of course, she wasn't there. She was probably in a darkened room somewhere, salivating, chewing the end of a carpet, and crying with rage and sorrow, and blaming it on all and sundry. This is what it was like to be on the wrong side of history, Hillary. This was her very own Stalingrad moment. And then there was all of that stunned reaction of all of her true believers. They would have been so mighty in victory, but in defeat, they were the exact opposite. The term crybabies springs to mind. They certainly didn't exhibit very many Churchillian qualities that night. So thank you to Philip from the UK for sending that. I appreciate it. Those who are watching, I am now reading through three. That is the first of three opinion pieces sent in by viewers. If anyone is interested in sending in their own opinion pieces, just send it to semiagog@gmail.com. I notice Mr. Ixmi is in here. Hello, glad to see you. Okay, so the second of these opinion pieces comes from Joseph in New Zealand, who writes, for a Kiwi, they're so far away, I forgot to fortify myself to be able to read something written from such a distant land. Again, Joseph from New Zealand writes, I am a Kiwi. Our government is predominantly leftist progressive. Following the Christchurch attack, our government has used this as the ultimate pretext to seize more power and rush through authoritarian policies and actions, largely without any public consultation. This includes, number one, highly restrictive hate speech laws. 4chan and 8chan are banned. You can face up to 14 years in prison for sharing or having a copy of the manifesto. You may have also heard Jordan Peterson's book has been pulled off the shelf in one of our top bookshops, to name another clear example of free speech coming under threat. Number two, highly restrictive gun reform has been implemented in less than 7 days without any public referendum. Number three, to commemorate the victims, New Zealand also held a 2-minute moment of silence, and also the Islamic call to prayer was broadcast all across New Zealand. People were also encouraged to wear headscarves. Again, no public referendum on this. Number four, more immigration is being pushed. Now, what to make of all this? This can be summed up by the main message our government is pushing. Diversity is our strength. Our country is now run by women, minorities, and people that want to destroy the West. The diversity is our strength message is an intolerant message, because it really means if you disagree with my leftist progressive agenda and you don't belong here. And not just that, we will destroy you, destroy your family, and make you into a pariah. This is the climate we are operating in now. Merely presenting a different opinion will have social justice warriors mobilizing to attack you and silence you. You are called racists. You are told that you have blood on your hands, that your ideology caused this. We can't even have an honest conversation because emotional blackmail is being used in every conversation by people willing to shut down debate. And this is being actioned by all our elected politicians. They have unanimously brought in the diversity is our strength message. Excuse me, they have unanimously bought into the diversity is our strength message, with the mainstream media backing them in full force. Diversity is our strength is a joke. The terrorist developed out of a resentment for mass immigration and diversity, which has plagued Europe and resulted in countless nationalist movements rising to thwart the tide of mass immigration and preserve European culture, and by extension, Western culture. What's New Zealand's solution to all this? More diversity, more bowing down to Islam. Never in a million years would I've expected the call to prayer playing across our radios. Islam literally means submission, and our country has submitted. New Zealand has officially fallen. It's honestly depressing, but I remain hopeful that we can make it through and come together as a nation. Part of coming together is having honest discussions. Sadly, the left is not interested in conversation. They are not interested in compromise. They enacted highly restrictive gun reform in less than 7 days, which just tells me that if you give these guys an inch, they'll take a mile. They've created a culture of thought policing akin to 1984 or the Soviet Union. They're forcing people to apologize. They are forcing people to submit. I'll tell you right now, he writes, I will never apologize. I will never submit. I will never surrender. If that means I go down surrounded by a swarm of enemies, so be it. These guys want all my rights and all my dignity. They will have none of it. I will not sacrifice an inch. People are slowly fighting back here and having the courage to speak the truth. The left's idea of progress is where the West is completely deconstructed. Gay marriage was used as a club to bash conservatives and destroy the family unit, to push for transgenderism and apologize for drag queen kids. These guys are extreme. They will literally push for policies that allow for infanticide. They will literally push for policies that bring in countless immigrants to replace us. They have no ends. And they are unfortunately in power now. We got to fight back. That's all. And that came to us from New Zealand. Again, I am only using first names. That was from Joseph. Thank you, Mr. Joseph. And the third and final of our opinion pieces comes from Patrick. Patrick has not indicated a home country, but he was kind enough to provide us with a title for his piece, which is Western Castration Instinct. Before I start, yes, to Swarocik, greetings from Poland. Hello to everyone in here I'm seeing. Zed Dez, Mr. Ixme, Marcus Aurelius, Kingslayer, Ashley, Feeling Lucky. Thank you all. Thank you all for joining me. Now, the third piece, again, from Patrick, no home country indicated, entitled Western Castration Instinct. The history of the West has progressed through a series of exterminations. These exterminations are not the fault of white people, but they are the fault of a certain breed of white person. Wolves were largely exterminated from Europe, but are now being protected due to their important ecological role. And aurochs were fully exterminated from Europe. Animals that certain Westerners felt uncomfortable around for whatever reason were destroyed. This extermination instinct was enacted against humans in the case of warlike humans being destroyed by being sent to foreign lands to fight constantly, so as to be exterminated that way. Also, certain Europeans exterminated many of their philosophers by way of priestly celibacy via the Catholic Church. The fact the will to exterminate philosophers was indigenous to Europe is evident in the persecution of Aristotle and the trial of Socrates. The mental powers of philosophers made some among the Europeans feel uncomfortable, much in the same way the large horns and strong bodies of the aurochs scared some people. This same instinct to exterminate the powerful led to the extermination of Europe's aristocracy. Aristocrats are considered to be martial races, according to the martial race theory developed by the British during the time of the British Raj. We have a pattern of some of the common people banding together to take down the mighty. This can be called the fear of power. Power is associated with the genitalia. The instinct to exterminate the powerful has now progressed to involve the literal castration of genitalia through abolishing the concept of gender and by convincing men and women to be castrated in the name of transgender ideology. Prior to this castration instinct being expressed towards humans, Western humans expressed it towards their own dogs through many dogs being castrated. There are Europeans who express the castration instinct less than other Europeans, or who don't express this instinct at all. The so-called rednecks and people of the southern USA are less likely to engage in behavior designed to castrate humans and perhaps other creatures as well. Right now, we can see the white left banding together to try to take down what they see as mighty aurochs, white rednecks, and other normal white people who haven't been brain polluted by leftist indoctrination. The white left are a gang of castrators looking to neurologically castrate other white people by way of what is known as political correctness. The left are the predators of normal white people, much in the same way witch hunters were accused or enemies of accused witches or wizards. This essay is not a call for white people to fight each other, nor is this essay a call for any sort of racial politics or behavior one way or the other. All that's being done here is simply recognizing that there are significant neurological differences among Westerners that are expressed in how they approach the world and how comfortable they are with the existence of powerful animals. An important self-preservation strategy in the West is to behave in a manner that does not draw attention to yourself, in a manner that keeps you from standing out from the crowd. This strategy does not always have to be employed in all cases, but it is an important strategy to consider and to apply appropriately. That was our third opinion piece from Patrick with No Home Country Indicated. So I thank Patrick for sharing that with us, sending it to me. Likewise, I thank Joseph in New Zealand and Philip in the UK. I should add that I do not endorse these opinions, but also I do not reject them. I'm offering them up merely as the opinions of some few of those following my channel, which I've chosen to share in the spirit of reciprocity. After all, people put up with my various rants, as well as my wayward changes in opinion and perspective. So I thought it worthwhile to give my listeners a chance to have their own voices heard. So if you want to share an opinion piece, you can send it to me at semiagog@gmail.com. All right, I'm going to have a quick sip of my drink, and then we will get into the extension of the discussion of house and household. And tonight that will entail our consideration of foster parenting, and intergenerational dialogue. All right. So have I missed anything? It seems that everything is working as it should. Welcome to Christian League. Welcome to Disciple of Bugs Bunny. And all the rest who have joined us. People, please remember to hit the like button. And check to make sure you're subscribed. YouTube is booting everyone. Okay. As I said, I'll be discussing some things related to my previous clip on the house, which explored the idea that house and household amount to a critical cultural technology that we'll have to revive if we wish to hoist ourselves up out of the mire of disconnected social and familial atomization the West is currently suffering. The focus tonight is related to all of this, but I'll be looking at two closely related subjects. As I said, fostering and intergenerational dialogue. Just to recap, for those who might not have seen my clip on the house, I'd recommend all of you go check it out. It's up on this channel, and I discussed it further at some length also with Jared from The Great Order and Jason of No White Guilt over on the channel No White Guilt. So you can find more about it there. So two clips, one on No White Guilt, one here, both on the house. Why is the house so important? Well, as I said, I discussed it elsewhere in the first clip in the series available on this channel. But to recap it, the main point was the house is a tool, a piece of cultural technology, if you will, a tool that allows us to shape events across generations, to project our will, our aims, and our goals across time. House and household together are a more realistically attainable way of reinvigorating our culture and our social relations. Together, house and household offer us an institutional basis for change that's more more accessible to each and every one of us than larger organizations like churches or NGOs or governments. And these larger organizations are things that we might not be able to as easily turn to our purposes, but we do have considerable control, more control than we have over really anything else in society when it comes to house and household. What I'm trying to say is that houses are things that each of us realistically within our power, have it within our power to establish. And by focusing our attention on realistic and attainable goals, we can regain a certain amount of control over our society. Oh, goddamn whiskey's good. Remember, if houses were not important, if families and the homes they occupy, if house and household were not critically important to the future of the West, then there wouldn't be so many powers working in concert to annihilate precisely these ancient building blocks of our culture. So much for our review of the previous clip. Now, let us turn to fostering and intergenerational dialogue, which I see as directly related to the whole topic of house and household that I have already discussed. We'll start with fostering, which of course denotes raising or rearing a child that is not by birth one's own. For many, this will bring to mind the adoption of disadvantaged children, from faraway lands, rescued with swollen bellies and surrounded by clouds of flies. But this is not what I'm concerned with here. Instead, I'll be focusing on fostering within existing communities, fostering undertaken to strengthen those communities and further tighten the close bonds between the families which those communities comprise. It should be obvious, I think, to anyone capable of thought, that when you have relationships tight enough that you'll allow others to foster your child at a certain age, you've actually got a community, and one that need not be one whit less individualistic for all that. Sometime back, I was listening to Millennial Woes talking to, who was it? Critical Condition, I think, a woman. And I think it was part of Millennial, if I'm not mistaken. And Woes mentioned that when you leave home and go to college or university, you feel like you're escaping your parents, when in reality, you're just finding a new set of parents, which fact is, of course, exploited. The point in that discussion was, again, if I remember it correctly, all about how the school acts as a mechanism for indoctrination. I agree with this, of course. I think, too, that it gives, it goes a good deal further, as I pointed out in my clip on how progressivism is weaponized adolescence. And in another clip, laying out my conviction that so-called social justice movements are intended to make people sick, which is to say mentally ill. Anyone who is interested can dig back through my content on the channel and find those clips. But there's another dimension of all of this that comes to mind here, and I think it is an important one. And it is the idea of foster parents, the idea of fostering a child. My main exposure to this idea, or the thing that really kicked this off, I should say, because I have read a bit about abandoned, exposed children who were adopted by the church in the medieval period, the Christian era, late antiquity, medieval, up into the, the Renaissance, that period, actually up until the Enlightenment. I've also looked at Roman adoption and the rest, but my main exposure to this line of thinking I'm sharing here was through my research into the Circassians of the Caucasus. Their culture is definitely a little explored resource for those wishing to reconstruct any number of ancient Western traditions. In this context, the foster father among the Circassians is called an Ataluk. Now, that's a Turkish term, and I heard that term from Circassians who are living in Turkey. It is very likely that, of course, there's some Adige, some Circassian, some terms in the Northwest Caucasian languages that are different. But for now, since Circassians use any number of Turkic words, we'll just go with Ataluk, which means something like a guardian or a tutor. And the relationships that are created between families that foster each other's children, they're known as milk brotherhood. Well, here in the US, we still have the practice of raising children of others, but it's usually restricted to close family, like when a mother or a father's parents raise their grandchild or grandchildren because the birth parents cannot do it, or because they've died, or they have a drug problem, or they've been sent to prison, or any number of these other sad possibilities. Or we go in the complete opposite direction, where children are adopted by people who have no relationship of any kind with the birth parents. Obviously, this really isn't the same sort of thing. It's not really what I'm talking about here. What I'm discussing is the practice of sending one's own child away for a time, and upon reaching a certain age, which varies, from one culture to another, of sending one's own child away to another family with whom one has a very close relationship. It's really a kind of second family or second parents. It's important to point out that the relationship is not one of surrogate parentage. So if we're talking about the Ataluk proper, the male guardian or mentor of one family to whom a closely allied family sends their child to be raised for a time, it's more like a special teaching relationship, and one that comes with a certain amount of distance, ensuring that the child is not spoiled, ensuring that the child is looked upon and raised and trained and educated by persons likely to be more objective than the birth parents. It's a big thing to bear in mind. What we hope the child could be, what we fear the child might be, because we see it as a projected extension of ourselves. And of course, genetically, it is a projected extension of ourselves. Those hopes and fears can get in the way of a sort of crystalline, rational assessment of the child. Now, I'm not saying that all children should be treated in this way, that we should be, giving electroshock therapy to our children, like, taking B.F. Skinner's advice, or giving them away like Rousseau. They obviously need emotional support and attention. What I'm trying to do here is underline the importance of having someone able to look with a little bit more objectivity at the child in order to make determinations about what might be best or worst for them. By that, I mean what kind of things should and shouldn't be done. Sorry, that was poorly phrased. So again, continuing with the example of the Ataluk proper, it's important to remember that this is not a father-son relationship. There are things that are not possible with father-son relationships that are possible with voluntary relationships, with voluntary obligations of the sort that we're talking about. One does not choose one's own parents or one's children, unless you want to get into some weird ass, Tibetan Book of the Dead type shit, where the souls flutter down like moths towards a light as the beast with two backs, as it approaches orgasm, creates a kind of heated beacon that draws a soul through time and space to be sucked down and trapped into a womb and born. But happily, we don't have to go into all of that. We can leave that aside and say that for the most part, one doesn't choose one's parents or one's children. But some element of choice, some element of conscious intentionality is available in the practice of fostering that we're considering here. All this allows birth parents to choose to send their children to a person better suited, perhaps, than they themselves to address that child's particular deficiencies or encourage their own unique talents. Parents would have the choice, to take a simplistic example, to send a scholarly boy to scholars, or to send an athletic or a warlike boy to be reared and trained among warriors, or choose to balance these innate characteristics by raising warriors for a time among scholars, or scholars for a time among warriors. When you have relationships tight enough that you will allow others to foster your child, you've actually got a community, and one that nevertheless need not be any less individualistic. When it was undertaken consciously, the practice of fostering was doubtless used to increase the likelihood that a formidable individual would thereby be produced. But at the same time, that individual would have his or her sense of community reinforced. He or she would have lived and grown and learned with his or her foster family. But at the risk of being called an atomized, egotistical individualist, I will say it again, the creation of more complete, of more formidable individuals was definitely a primary aspect of all of this. Now, a child lacking in martial prowess could be sent to a family known for instilling just that virtue in its members, or rather than attempting to address a deficiency, a choice could be made to make the most of some notable talent in the child, kind of like I was talking about before. The child's family was already known for martial prowess. They would be ill-equipped to raise a son showing, for example, a great talent for hand craftsmanship, mastery in some craft. Rather than attempt to make a hawk out of a handsaw, the family could send him away to study under some master craftsman with whom the family had connections. Obviously, these examples could be endlessly multiplied, but I'm guessing you've glimpsed at least the outlines of the picture I'm trying to paint here, which could be illustrated just as well by reference to the Roman practice of adoption I mentioned before, common in the ancient world, as easily as it could be through reference to obscure social practices in the high Caucasus Mountains, with the example of this Ataluk among the Circassians. So as far as fostering goes, in summary, making choices of this sort in child rearing was clearly based on the desire to align nurture as much as possible with nature in the pursuit of individual excellence. But that excellence would in turn reflect back upon both the birth family and the foster family. And at the same time, it would engender it has the potential to deepen existing social bonds among cooperating families or clans. It really rather nicely illustrates the way in which individual and collective spheres of life can be complementary. The two are not necessarily mutually exclusive. Indeed, they shouldn't be. They should be intertwined. All of you collectivists can clap your hands. Since you've gotten an individualist to say good things about collectives and collectivism, all under the banner of cooperation, you understand me, conscious and intentional effort. But yes, I said it. So the closest thing that we have now to put all this in perspective to any of this is boarding schools. And these, because they're quite expensive for the most part, are really only accessible to families that have a fair amount of money. And in any case, with boarding schools, instead of trusting those closest to your family to foster your children, they're instead sent to the state or to private institutions for indoctrination of various kinds, or to suck dust from the collectivist tit. In the interest of time, and to avoid any possibility that I'll drop dead from apoplexy in the middle of this live stream, we won't be going into the whole subject of public school. There is much more I could say about all of this, and maybe someday I will, but I'd like to turn now to the second topic. But before I do it, actually, let me just point out, for those who maybe didn't get it, why all of this stuff about fostering is closely related with house and household, obviously, is because you have to have a house and household and be allied with other houses and households in order for any of this to be possible. And as I said, such practices would tend to reinforce the identity of the house and household, both the one sending the child off and the one receiving it. The one sending the child off says, I will put my family's genetic future in your hands. I will allow you to take care of my child because that's how much I trust you. And in return, the family that takes it, reaffirms and reciprocates with these bonds of trusts and builds this stronger relationship over time. But they can also become famed. It could be, did you hear that so-and-so is so famous for his equestrian skills and horsemanship that all the finest families send their children there to become riders? Everyone gains in status and renown. Now, this is stuff that I wanted to talk about when I was first talking about houses, but I had to go through all the stuff that I did in those previous household clips in order for any of this that I'm now talking about, which is kind of secondary and contingent. Otherwise, none of what I'm talking about now would make sense. So now let me turn to the second topic, also related to my previous discussions of house and household, and that is intergenerational dialogue. To put that into simpler terms, for those of you who might be struggling with it, it means old people talking to fucking young people. And we don't do that very much in the United States anymore. Families are kept separate and apart. They wander across the country like tumbleweeds or dust balls of lint and cat hair, driven by the winds of this or that company offering a better or worse salary, or the quality of schools or property taxes. And when people do get old, when the old people would, under normal circumstances, be hanging out with the children of their children, helping to shape and ensure continuity of the family's knowledge, they'd be on the front porch, rocking in the chair and smoking a church warden while watching the children play and telling stories or whatever it is. I realize I'm idealizing it. It's not always that nice, but it could be that way. And we don't have it anymore. It no longer happens for the most part. What happens is our elderly get sent away to repulsive death holes where people who are misnamed caregivers rob them and lie to them and mistreat them and then put a bright face on it, kind of like when a warden welcomes politicians to tour the prison. The family day at the home is when they'll change the water in the vases, take the dead flowers out, mop the shit up off the floor, put the one or two crazy old people who are screaming down in some hole in the basement. Anyway, it's not always that bad, but very often it is. And that's where our elderly go instead of being around to talk to our young children. And there's more than that. We have the idea that these age cohorts, these generational cohorts, are not supposed to be speaking to each other. It's like, you see teenagers like, oh my God, why did that guy just come up and talk to us? Oh my God, what a loser. Why is he talking to us? All of this kind of crap. I don't know how kids talk these days, but that's how idiots talked when I was young. It's going on everywhere. They're not supposed to talk to each other. And so to kind of bring this around, we often, or too often, consider only the synchronic aspect of atomization, the atomization of individualism. Synchronic means at the same time. Yeah, you can figure that out. Synchronic, all occurring at the same time, distinct from diachronic, which is along the line of time. So synchronic is everything taken at a certain instant. Diachronic is sequentially across time. So we typically pay attention only to the synchronic aspect of atomization, the atomization we talk about as individualism. Synchronic atomization is the atomization we're all suffering from in relation to one another in any given moment. But what about the atomization arising from intergenerational dislocation? What about the atomization that happens along the line of time diachronically? What about the atomization that directly results from segregating generations, either indirectly through the destruction of families, or more directly through the idea of age cohorts, with conflicting interests, like millennials versus so-called boomers. I get called a boomer all the time. I'm Gen X, fuck you. But anyway, you get the point. Anybody older is automatically a boomer, and if a boomer's ever good, you have to qualify it by saying based boomer or something, right? Conflicting interest, the idea of conflicting interest between age cohorts, and it's being pushed by the left. It's a major tool of those. It has to do with their whole idea of weaponized adolescence. Progressivism is weaponized adolescence to hate and resent the generation that came before you, to want to destroy everything that they've done. It's a major aspect. Again, I've got a clip about it. It's called Progressivism is Weaponized Adolescence. And to take another example, look at the example of the Remainers in the UK, who are openly saying that they're just waiting for older voters to die. Can you imagine? Like, I'm going to break from my notes here. One of the most repulsive things I've ever experienced in my life, and it happened with a business partner of mine who came from the Northeast. He was from Massachusetts. Fucking Yankee. Not that there aren't good people in Massachusetts, but this guy, man, he was a piece of work. He talked about how his parents, his father was a physician, I think, was very successful, very bright guy. His son was very bright too, an excellent programmer, Java programmer. But he talked about when he went home and his father had some, famous paintings. I don't know, a Matisse or a Mondrian or some crap like that I'm not interested in, and had a few of these paintings. And they all sat at the table and argued over who was going to get what when the parents died. And I remember hearing about that, and I was like, that's repulsive. Like, that's disgusting, to sit at the table with your living parents and argue with your siblings over who gets what when the rest of them croak. It's beneath contempt. Now, imagine that on the level of whole generations in a culture. Whole generations in a culture who are willing to say, yeah, we're just waiting for the old ones to die so the revolution can continue. It's at that point that you realize just how black and rotten and vile all of this is. So all of this correlates with the new emphasis on disposable housing and multifamily housing. It also corresponds to the fashionable ideas so popular these days about how we're not supposed to take pride in what are called accidents of birth, how we're not supposed to be proud of things that we were just born with. Now, I get the point when people like Molyneux and the rest say, how could you be proud to be white? Or how could you be proud to, come from a family with wealth? It's not your accomplishment. You can't be proud of your ancestors, but you can admire them. I mean, I get the point, and there's considerable truth in it. But by the same token, there is a basis to be proud of your family's decisions and the things that typically we would say you were just born with. You shouldn't get out of hand with it. And I'm perfectly willing to accept that you could argue over whether or not proud is really the right word, or respectful and admiring. My point is that there is a basis where things that you are just born with are things that you can take pride in. Never mind, they always say that we're never supposed to take pride in things that you're just born with. But of course, these are the same people who think that we're supposed to suffer justly deserved pangs of guilt because of what our ancestors allegedly did. So the hypocrisy there is just fucking ridiculous. Don't you be proud of something that, you were just born with, like your race or the fact that your ancestors built this country and that these immigrants came later. And yet definitely be guilty for what they did. It's just so fucking stupid. The point, however, is that each of us is a product of billions of instinctive actions and measured decisions that occurred across generations. We are the fruit, the loin fruit, quite literally, of our ancestors' choices. If a woman learns to listen to her intuitive heart, and these are the best kinds of women, if you got one who doesn't know how to listen to her intuition, you've got problems. But anyway, if a woman learns to listen to her intuitive heart and makes a decision based on that intuition to marry and reproduce with a man because he quote unquote smells perfect, she's made a choice. Hasn't she contributed to my genetic makeup? My mother chose intuitively in certain ways to be with my father. Some of it was rational, some of it wasn't. But how she's built, what she comes from genetically, had to do with her sense of whether or not somebody would be a good fit. That's a kind of choice. And a sequence of such choices led to me and what I am. So how can we say that a individual's congenital virtues are unearned? I mean, I could see where you could argue that they're perhaps unearned by the child, but the parents worked hard for them, and all those previous generations worked hard for them. And so we could at least say, after a fashion, that the family, that the bloodline had earned these things. And as a family, therefore, they may justly take pride in them. Now, look at the way intergenerational dialogue has been torpedoed. There are all these things that moved through the family across time, the decisions of the previous generations, the ones that inform the subsequent generations. It's all been torpedoed. We're now formed into generational cohorts, generational identity groups. This whole business of calling one group the greatest generation, another one the baby boomers, and the next one Gen Xers, and the next one millennials and Gen Z, and all this. There were Gen Y was in there for a while, and they decided they liked millennials better. All of it's a bunch of bullshit. And what's really behind it, other than just base desire to lock people into marketing cohorts, which is what you get with listening to your music on the radio, and the Cool Young People channel has your music, so you're a cool young person, and then the music moves forward, and you're hearing Red Hot Chili Peppers, and that's now old people music, and then the really old people music is like Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, and the really old people music that I remember, but you guys are now too young for, is when you hear Big Band and Artie Shaw and this kind of shit. It's all just a way to lock people in to marketing groups. But what does that do for our culture? And I already pointed out the business of people being, in the UK, waiting for, the old people to die so that, they can, be sure to stay in the EU. It's fucked up. It's a way of bringing identity politics into our very generation. So what I'm getting at here, I'm sorry I'm winding all over the place, but as I started out, we've got synchronic atomization, which is the individualism at any given moment between the particles flying away from each other in what we falsely call a society. But there is also an atomization that occurs across generations, which is ripping us apart. Because I think about what happens when the granddad sits on the porch and tries to keep his dentures from falling out, and laughs and plays with the little children, and they listen to stories. You've got a mechanism for continuity where the oldest are talking to the youngest, which is ensuring that whatever the parents gave, you've got this background generation that's also sharing that knowledge, and it all, I would want to say, chains together, but a better image because of the femininity of domestication, but also something that's more gentle about it when it works properly. It's braiding the knowledge, plating the knowledge of the family, and plating together the knowledge and experiences of the various generations so that it forms a continuous chain. I'm mixing my metaphor. But instead we have millennials are the victims of the boomers. So whether or not there's truth in millennials being victims of the boomers, and that's, not something I want to contest, especially given that I just discussed how earlier generations can earn things for us. Likewise, they can spoil and corrupt things for us. So I'm not arguing about that. Yes, there are things the boomers did that suck, and we pay the price for it. But my point here is simply that we can see how identity politics is being applied longitudinally, diachronically along the line of duration. We used to have very deep traditions that can be directly traced to biology, far deep and back beyond even mammals. Mark traditions, having a monogram on your towel is one of these. Monogram on your towel scratching graffiti into a bathroom stall, having a household emblem that goes on the lintel above your door. All that goes back to animal territorial marking. Look at how family insignia were transmitted in pre-literate and semi-literate and even in literate periods. The youngest child would generally take a family's mark without modification. The firstborn would take the family's mark and add some secondary little feature to it. Now you can say, "Oh, Oliver, what the hell does that mean? Why are you talking about this?" Because it goes back to what I was saying before about reaching across generations. The firstborn takes their new mark. That means everything that the firstborn owns gets that new mark. Anybody who comes across, say you're a fisherman and you're the firstborn and somebody's walking along the beach and you're out somewhere else, you know, off in the bushes taking a leak, and while you're gone, they can see that your boat's there. Your boat, your oarlocks, your oars, your nets, your floats, your fishing gear, all that shit is going to be marked with your little family mark. And they can look at it and they can see, oh, that's the family mark of the such and such family, but it's got this little blip that shows that it's the new generation. So that's probably so-and-so's firstborn son. It has to do with property. These go on boundary stones. They can be marked on trees that have beehives or wood that you are allowed to harvest. It can be branded on cattle. And so the firstborn child has the modification of the old mark, and then, you know, subsequent children will have their own little variations. Excuse me. Some of them being affected by marriage. So you marry into another family, maybe it's matrilineal mark. But what I'm trying to get at here is usually the youngest of the children will stay with the old parents as they get old, because they're the ones who are with the parents as they were the oldest. And they generally stay there because they're taking care of the parents as they get old. And this isn't the old versions of society. And so what would happen? They would take the original mark without a modification. And what does that do? That ensures a kind of continuity, because the firstborn goes out, has a new mark, go west, young man, conquer, kick ass, take names, right? Next generation, maybe you go into the clergy, someone else becomes a merchant. But then there's, you know, so-and-so who was born late. He was an accident, and, you know, his aging mother really loved him a lot. And so he stayed with his old mother and father and took care of them when they were ill. And guess what happens? When they die, he keeps their immediate property and he keeps their mark. And by keeping their mark, look what happened. The last child, which means the child who was born when the parents were the oldest, which means the biggest connection, the most expansive connection across time, because you've got the oldest person giving the mark to the youngest child, which kind of removes the potential static or noise in the signal. How am I going to say this? Hopefully some of you are following me. The idea, and I'm not saying this well, so it's not your fault. The idea is that by having the youngest child take the mark of the parents, when those parents at their oldest, first off, the parents are at their oldest, they've made all their mistakes on the younger children. They're at the height of their wisdom. Hopefully they're going to raise that child right. And in any case, whether they raise them right or wrong, they're going to do it with the maximum amount of knowledge that they've acquired. And that's going to connect that young child to the living memory of that previous generation. And so the mark gets passed on clean and clear. You know, the experience of these now older parents that they earned earlier in life and through raising all the previous children, they'd keep the original mark, pass it on to the child. The child would stay on the core land. The youngest would learn from his or her parents. Sure, to be the oldest, acting as a bridge to ensure continuity, like I said, while the older children, the firstborn and the like, instead, you know, go off and make a name for themselves. So that's how we have that idea of continuity. And that relates directly to what I was talking about, you know, with the grandma or the grandpa sitting on the porch with the rocker, looking at the little kids playing ball with grass stains on their knees and Kool-Aid mustaches, telling them stories of things, you know, from far past. That's a continuity, but it goes away. It goes away when we drive the generations, we drive wedges between the generations and force them to despise one another. It's fucking horrifying. So I don't want to get too much into the marks and marking. It's just one example. And again, I'll grant you I didn't put it out there very well, but let's take another example of intergenerational dialogue. When I lived in Turkey, I would go out in the evenings and I'd go to some cafe to, like, chill out and have a few beers with my friends. It'd be on the weekends, and I'd find myself at a table, and I was probably mid-20s at the time, and there'd be people in their mid-30s, mid-40s. Very often we were joined by my friend's father, who was in his late 50s, early 60s at the time. He was a very famous painter. And we're all around the table together. We're all hanging out, having drinks and talking. The older people would often go home a little bit sooner. They wouldn't stay up until 3 a.m, but they'd be out till 1 or 2 drinking and having fun. They didn't go to the dance club afterwards or whatever, but they'd be out and drinking and talking and shooting shit. And you'd be sitting there when you said, "Oh, that girl's kind of cute," and then your friend would be like, "You should go talk to her." And then there'd be a 60-year-old guy sitting next to you. And that 60-year-old guy might be able to say something that would, you just suddenly put everything into perspective and make you go, "Oh, wow," or maybe I should learn something. Or he'd say, "That's stay away brand, son. I don't want to get involved in your business, but that thing right there is fur and fangs." We don't have that. That's the kind of intergenerational dialogue I'm talking about, not just on the front porch with the grandparents and the little kids. So you have the idea of shared advice. You have the idea of respect between the generations, and the idea that you aren't totally alien to one another, like that you're oil and water and should never be near one another. It's fucking ridiculous. And it's like the worm eating the roots of Yggdrasil. It's fucking destroying our culture, this whole idea of forcing the generations to fight each other. It's horrifying. And it's strange too, when you have something happen. When I was living in Turkey, I was really crazy in love. I mean, crazy in love. And it all fell apart. It was terrible. I mean, fucked me up terribly. And what was crazy, the one person, my younger friends, had no idea what was going on with me. I mean, they're like, "Oh yeah, it seems like you're upset, man. You can just chill here at my place since you don't want to be back at your place with her. So, you can spend some time on your own here. Take as much time as you need, chill out." They didn't get it. My friend's dad in his 60s, he came over and he's like, "What the hell happened?" I'm like, He's like, "Yeah, I've seen it. Done it before too. Listen, I know you're in a tight spot, and I heard from my son that you wanted to get your stuff out of that house. So I'm going to send my driver over, and he will be willing to help you. You've got the use of him for the entire day, and he'll take the car. In Turkey, when you want to move something out of the house, the roads are very narrow. You park the car for a minute to get shit, and neighbors start emptying ashtrays on your car and screaming at you because you're blocking the 1-lane road. It's a big pain in the ass, but he sent his dude with his truck, his vehicle, to help me. And that's the kind of thing that the younger person simply doesn't know, but an older person does. And again, you have a little bit of objectivity because there's a distance between you and him. He's not my dad. He can talk to me in ways maybe he can't talk to his own son. Not that I'm closer to him than his son or anything like that, but there are things that he can see and that he can freely talk to me about because of that distance. So this is the kind of thing I'm talking about with intergenerational dialogue. And of course, before we talked about intergenerational dialogue, I was also talking about fostering. And so why I wanted to talk about fostering and intergenerational dialogue is because, again, I had to lay out the stuff about houses first. But now that I've talked about house and household, now when you take a look at what I'm talking about here in terms of fostering, milk brotherhood, intergenerational dialogue, extending the knowledge of the family as this trajectory across time, you can only really see the value in that if you have the foundation of the house and household stuff. And I wanted to talk about it because there's so much going on here. Everybody's, foaming and frothing, rightly in many cases, about so many abuses, about so many outrages, but there is so much that really is within our own power. So bringing it all the way back around, house and household is something we can change in a much more immediate sense by taking control over our own destiny, our family's destiny, and trying to lock in the strands across time and the various elements of the family. So fostering and intergenerational dialogue are, for the reasons just outlined, things of great interest to me that I think all of us should be thinking about. There is so much that is within our power that we don't really we don't really pay attention to. And so we let it slide by, and we continue to bitch about things that, you know, are not in our power, while ignoring the things that really are within our power to change, at least far more in our power to change than all these other things that we take exception to. So please hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. Please check to make sure you are subscribed. Thank you to those who provided me with opinion pieces. Now we are at 11 o'clock, and what will follow now is Q&A for those who are interested. I think I will be able to stay here until midnight, unless I get really, really stir crazy, or if I've just bored the shit out of you people, you can let me know. This concludes the ongoing patter, the unrelenting monologue portion of our discussion this evening. So, ladies and gentlemen, please pop your questions into the chat window, and I am going to look at the remarks that are coming in here to see what we've got, how you people feel about my latest rant, and in the process, I'm going to mix myself up a quick drink. Please excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so hopefully everybody heard me, and hopefully you will now jump in and share with me your thoughts. And we can move this thing forward, ladies and gentlemen. Mm-hmm. Yes, Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do we got, peoples? What do you got for me? Good questions. Joanna Noel says, bravo. I thank you, Miss J. Thank you very much. And thank you for bothering to watch all of this, because I think it's much later where you are. Much later. So yeah, I appreciate you dropping in. Oh, a whiskey. Mm-hmm. So what do we got here, people? Semi, what's your opinion on tats? Presumably tattoos. I have a bunch of them, and I don't mind them. If I had it to do over again, I might get better ones. They can be cleaned up a bit. At this point, I just don't really care anymore. They were fun. I don't mind them. I have them. And they don't bother me at all. But by the same token, you know, I understand there are a lot of people these days, you know, who don't see them as cool. Kids these days don't think tattoos are cool. And that's fine too. I don't really care one way or another. I have them. They don't bother me. In some circumstances, they can look great. In other circumstances, they can look awful. I guess I should say the ones I really take exception to are ruining a perfectly good tit by tattooing it. That annoys the shit out of me. Oh, man, the number of like butterflies on tits. I do not want to see an insect with antennae on a boob. It's just ridiculous. And, you know, the tramp stamp at the base of the back, that's another one that I had to grow up with. I'd just as soon never see one of those again. But, yeah, for whatever that's worth. Next! What else do we have? What brand of whiskey? It's Bullet. Find Your Own Heroes, definitely. Hell yeah. It wasn't until Louis the 17th says it wasn't until the late 60s, 70s that people started dividing time by decades with usage of terms like 50s, 40s, 30s. Yeah, probably not. I mean, the French are all fucked up anyway. They ever since the Republican calendar and all the revolutionary crap, they've been playing all kinds of games trying to like change the week. They want to get rid of Sunday, so that means they have to change from a 7-day week to a 10-day week, which is just, I mean, ugh. And then you see the same thing going on with the Bolsheviks when they took power. They try to set up 5-day overlapping work cycles. They all just try to, whoops, do that first. They all fuck with your they try to get to the very root of the cultural things that hold your society together, and they're all just fucking monsters, commie monsters, social engineers and bitches of one kind or another. They all need to go to hell, and swiftly. Yes. But I certainly wouldn't want to engage in hate speech. All right, I'm almost done with this, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for this drink stuff. Let's see, are there any other questions? Nick says, a girl with a tongue stud said it enhances oral pleasure. I said the last time I checked it didn't need enhancing, and I don't need a speed bump either. I don't know. The tongue piercings, I don't care that much. I knew people who had them who weren't dumb, but I never really cared for them much. Fuck, I think I just ate a piece of my hair, man. This granny gray hair. Sometimes it's a bit much. Okay. All of this will be done momentarily, people. Thank you for your patience. And that is that. Spit it out, you bastard. You know the joke about the Irishman who catches the fly on the edge of his glass. All right. So what else do we have here? It's a whiskey, Nick. Come on, man. I like it. I'm a princess. I deserve special things. All right. Level O. Oh, I just missed that. It just got pushed up. Being able to talk with older people was a great asset growing up, especially in my 20s. Odd that it is so rare these days. Yes, and I expect it's going to be getting much more rare, unfortunately. Kriegsgalder says, the Pennsylvania Dutch of all stripes still maintain a multi-generational family homestead. Have you ever looked into them? I've seen a little bit about them, but the nature of the insulation around their communities and the requirements of considerable religious conformity mean that they're not going to, their solutions are never going to really work for me and the kind of people I hang out with. I don't begrudge them their right to go off and do it how they want. But point taken, I could certainly look to see ways in which, independent of the religious picture, they may or may not have attempted to institutionalize all of that. All right. Bjorn says, have you ever heard of the YouTube channel Asha Logos? I think you would find his work very interesting. Yes, I have heard of that. And I think, actually, a person under that name was listening to at least one of my interviews or discussions I did a while back, and I have it filed in my mind. There are some names that I remember, like asshole, and other I remember being cool. I don't remember details, but I remember that person not being an asshole. Oh, wow. Louis XVII refers to Septidi 7th Germinal in the year of the Republic 227. Yeah. Celebrating the birch according to the Republican calendar. Yeah, everybody should look into the Republican calendar. It sounds like Louis XVII is already fully familiar with it. Those of you who are not, that, along with the 5-day cycles I mentioned that the Bolsheviks tried to institute, very instructive. If you're wondering how these commies get about their programs of social engineering, all you have to do is look at the Republican calendar, and it's perfectly clear. And that's back in, 1790s, up through the first decade or whatever of the 1800s. They've been up to this same bullshit for a long time. All right. Prism asks, what do you think of the Trump no collusion conclusion? Same thing that Tim and I have been talking about for a long time. So it's the first one of the major you guys were right moments. So yeah, it suits me just fine. Gavin Baker says, what are your thoughts on woman's involvement in politics? Should the 19th Amendment be repealed? No, I don't think so. We have to go forward, not backwards, and our culture will only... I just read Tire Queen telling me to cut my hair off. Fuck you. It just got 1 inch longer, boy chick. To Gavin Baker's question, though, no, I don't think that we should remove women's right to vote. We should continue to try to produce the most formidable individual women we can, just as we do with men. I don't see us being able to crawl back up inside the womb to some previous phase of history. And indeed, are having strong women as one of the primary contributors, I believe, to us being the formidable culture that we are, even though we may be hanging on by our fingernails. So no, I don't want to see them stop voting. I want to see all of us behaving less like idiots and receiving better educations, and maybe introducing things like property requirements for voting. Certainly you can't vote if you're on any kind of government assistance, that kind of stuff. But I don't think we should do it based on sex. I know lots of great women, and you can say, well, there are few compared to the majority. Well, yeah, but it's the same way with men. So yeah, I'm not on the whole MGTOW bandwagon. We just talked about how there's individual atomization. We've talked about multi-generational or generational atomization. And they've been throwing in not just racial atomization or balkanization as well. They've been trying to do it with our very genders. And no, I would rather walk hand in hand to the future with the women of my culture rather than turning on them and rending them because it happens to be fashionable. Dandy Jean. Fucking Nick. That's all right. See, Nick, I would want around if there was a real fight. And then I'd want Tire Queen to be able to drive Getaway. All right. Let's see here. Fuck, sorry, people. I'm lost. If you guys want me to see your questions, please do give me the little @Semiagog thing so it stands out, because otherwise I just lose track of it. Joanna Noel asks, you planning any travels to Europe in the near future? I had a project that was going to happen, and now it's on hold. It may fall through. And it was likely to involve doing field research in Britain related to homes, people's homes and garages, if you can imagine that. As I understand it, most people don't have garages in the UK. And I was actually hoping that we didn't get the project, because I could just see me, trying to fly in with the client and everything and going to the UK and then being told that because I have a channel with hate speech, I can't, enter the country. Honestly, the UK seems like a third world country at this point. So yeah, no plans at the moment. I do want to get to Poland eventually, just for fun. Bruce McGrew asks, what music do you prefer? Overwhelmingly flamenco. And then one step down from that is, what do you call it? Rock and roll, heavy metal, and then all kinds of smarty pants music. All the shit that my music friends, would get all snotty about. Well, you have to know that so-and-so was in such and such band. And how did you not know that this band was an influence on this band? There's a whole field of granular. It's like, I call it counting fleas on a dog's back. The whole way that, the music store nerds get into talking about their various channels and threads of things. And I had Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Celtic Frost, Slayer, all kinds of shit from when I was a kid. And then later things like 16 Horsepower, Dirty 3. I like Nick Cave quite a bit for a while, Birthday Party, Bad Seeds, all over the place. But these days I mainly listen to classical music and flamenco. All right. Michael Goodwin asks, how are we supposed to guide our kids into this concept with respecting our family, peers, when with all our best intentions are ruined when they go to school and get sucked into the vacuum of BS, presumably meaning bullshit? Homeschooling? I don't know. You probably can't get away with homeschooling in Britain, as socialistic as they are. In the US, you can, though. I don't know about the rest of the European countries. I mean, I would think the idea is to, man, it's just so hard. You're working all the time. Maybe you can't homeschool. Maybe you and your wife have to work or something. I don't know. It's a hard question. But if we don't sort it out, we're fucked. Okay. Wow, Mr. Ixme says we should have an intelligence test for voting. Wow. I can see a definite test of some kind, like, just like you get a driving test, but whoo, you are fucking kicking the hive right there. You're the girl who kicked the hornet's nest. All right. But that does bear thinking about. Disciple of Bugs Bunny. Nothing is ever good has ever come from women voting. I don't know. That's just too lockstep. It's too like it is this way when it varies individual by individual. Queen Ratbar says, have you ever read George Bernard Shaw's An Intelligent Woman's Guide? No, but I mean, I'm familiar with Pygmalion. Let's see here. Mr. Ixme says plenty of dumb shit dudes out there too. And how? Let's see here. Take an overdose of vitamin D and you will know what Florida man means. I confess to complete puzzlement. I have no idea what you're talking about. I take vitamin D sometimes because all I'd get otherwise is my monitor tan. All right. Summer of Love in Europe 2019, French Flashpoint. Yeah, I'm giving a lot of that's from Fiend J. Thank you, sir, for your question and for joining us this evening. I don't know, but Tim and I have both been wrong. It was Tim's call the last 2 summers that this shit was all going to break out. And but I won't put it all on him because I agreed completely. I saw it coming and I still think it's coming. Look, I didn't bring a lighter up here. And I do believe it's probably coming this summer. It probably is going to be the summer of love. But that said, 2 other times I have been wrong. Okay, what the fuck is going on with matches, by the way? Has anybody else experienced this thing where fucking matches don't work anymore? Fucking common bitches. Once upon a time, you used to be able to fucking light a match. God damn it, they don't make them like they used to. Prism. Do you have a response to Plato's claim that democracy always ends in oligarchy? And do you think that the American Republic is able to avoid the collapse into oligarchy? Well, I'll say I think the American Republic can claw its way out of it, but it's currently in it at the moment. The good news is that that is democracy. We have constitutional republic with representative democracy, you know, with a number of checks and balances inserted into it. So hopefully we won't go the way of the dodo like that, but we'll see. Nick is a fucking UK guy. Scots, Irish, and Welsh. Joanna Knoll says, I see Ollie as a clog dancer at heart. Actually, clogging's cool. When the women do that back leg thing and it swirls around, clogging's all right, man. I saw some girls when I was a kid in those red and white check dresses with their clogging shoes on. Winged back hair, spray painted, hair sprayed down. Oh yeah, Jordache jeans. Girls named Wanda and Mandy. Oh yeah, I tell you what. Denim mini skirts. Once upon a time, yeah, I like flamenco better though. So what do we have here? Blue Oyster Cult. Blue Oyster Cult was the first band I ever saw live. The first rock concert I ever went to was Blue Oyster Cult with Aldo Nova and Accept opening up. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, governor. All right. Don Browning says, have you heard that the Imam of the Christchurch Mosque has pointed the finger at Mossad Israel? Yes, I have. And it makes me yawn as much as all the rest of it. I wish they'd all just shut the fuck up. Not that I don't think that Israel and Mossad get involved in all kinds of funky things, and in New Zealand in particular, but you could also make the call that China is all fucking over New Zealand, you know, working their business with it. Binary Epidemic says, Semigog, what area of the U.S. would you say would be a good center of operations for a homesteading permaculture movement? I don't know, because I don't know shit about plants. My mother knows quite a bit about plants, and I just never picked it up. I know not to step on them or mow them down, but otherwise I'm weak. Now I know climate-wise, the Southeast is fucking brilliant and verdant and gorgeous, but it can be fucking hot too. Now, the only other part of the country I like as much, and I haven't even been there, I just like it from photos, is the Pacific Northwest, because it's just like the ferns and the trees. You just see it and you're like, holy shit, it's gorgeous. But I haven't lived there, so I don't know. Ask Mr. Ixby. That's a person who knows more about plants than I do, and also I think knows about that region. All right. 11D Levity, did I listen to Current 93, etc.? Yes. My life is measured by this glass, by all those little sounds that through pass. That's actually where I first heard about John Hall and the Metaphysical Poets, because I heard Hourglass for Diana on that Current 93 album, and I wrote to David Tibet, and he told me that he got it out of the Penguin Collection of Metaphysical Poets. And yes, I've listened to Coil. I have a original Austin Osman Spare drawing that I bought from John Balance of Coil before he died. I corresponded with some of them. I knew a bunch of the Psychic TV, Temple of Psychic Youth people. I used to be all into that shit. So yes, I did quite a bit. Nurse with Wound, Throbbing Gristle, all that stuff. I did, yes, once upon a time. I'm reading Traditional Marking Systems. Great work, Ollie. Everyone who likes these discussions should buy it. Wow, that from Alfonso Soroka. Thanks very much. I appreciate the shout out. Thank you. And it's interesting to see that somebody actually read it. I, just as an aside, am going to be getting back into translating my work on Circassian Damgas. It's a pain in the ass because it's written with Arab. It's written in Ottoman Turkish with the Arabic alphabet, which is of course used by the Ottomans to write Turkish prior to the reforms of Ataturk in the 20s, 30s. I'm translating, Alfonso Soroka will know it since he's reading Traditional Marking Systems. There's a bunch that I translated already, but I'm translating more of it, and it's full of fascinating shit. I will be doing that soon again. Wow, people are talking about how homeschooling is illegal. Yeah, that's the state wants to ensure that they shape your children. They bind little boards to their heads and put little Chinese fucking slippers on their feet so they grow stunted. That's one thing that before I die, I do wish to address is public school and the fucking horror of it. I hated it. I fucking hated it. There were individual teachers who amounted to bright lights who treated me very well, far better than I deserved. But what a poisonous heap of shit, man. Nothing is as ugly as the state-run schools in the U.S. have been for me. Horrible. All right, I'm getting lost here. God damn it. I'm way behind. Smollett walked. Thoughts. That's from Nick. I think that something is going on with that. Either it's going to disappear, and I don't think it will, or I think they're just going to haul up a beast from the mud. There's going to be some big-ass fucking catfish on the line that's going to be like 500 pounds. There is something going on there with all this business of Smollett getting released. And it may be that somebody really stepped in it and just tracked shit across the carpet. And we are soon going to find out that there's a whole lot more to that. I hope that's the case. Oh, vitamin D is a metaphor for male sexual organs, according to Beyonce lyrics. You can tell. How's that Tim says it? I don't give a shit. All right. Ollie's my Gen X brother. Heard that. All right. Aldo Nova. Wow. Foreigner. Wow, I never liked Foreigner much. I got that up there with who's that guy? Strolling Stroke Man. I got it all. That reminds me of rednecks going out to the roller skating rink with the redneck girls when I lived outside the city. Oh, God. Billy Squire, that's it. Joanna Knowles says, get tips from Maitre Mark. If Maitre Mark can avoid going to fucking jail for chasing people around with swords, I'll take his advice. I think we got to wait about another year to see if Maitre Mark survives it. I hope he does. He's a bright light in my otherwise miserable day when I watch his clips. He's great. All right. Green Rat Briar says, back in the old days, only property owners voted. It was a good way to keep your shit from being voted away from you. I do agree. Current 93, Summer of Love. All right. Coop Bleat is off, apparently, or was sometime back. Have a good evening, sir. Bjorn says, do you have any opinion on Julius Evola and traditionalism? No, I don't at this point. I've seen that Philosophicat is reading some of his stuff, and I've heard other people mention him. I think Jared from the Great Order. I need to check it out. I've just been going through old boxes of my somewhat recently deceased father's books, and I found an Evola book on sexuality. So since I've already got it, I'm going to read it soon. It's like 5th down in the pile right now. Do I wear reading glasses? From Chuck Stewart. I hate mine. No, I don't. I can see really well up close. Though what's happening now is that if it gets any closer than this, it blurs. That's about as close as I can hold it. But this whole range from here to here is in focus, so I don't need them. Thank God. Roy Thomas Bauer says, have you ever heard of gematria? Of course I have, both Greek and Hebrew. Public schools or indoctrination centers. Mr. Ixme does not speak with a forked tongue. Oh, someone just messaged me. I love it when it vibrates in my pocket. Sometimes when I'm alone, I call myself. Okay, nothing important. All right. Questions, people. Good questions, Billy Squire. That's how far I am behind. Okay. Baron Von Blair says, love your work. Thank you very much. Thank you. Lonely as a night. Prism, have you ever tried to make your own sword weaponry? Yes. And it was functional but ugly and crappy. I now know quite a bit more about making traditional weapons, edged weapons, blanche or whatever. And I know that I'm not good at it. But I have a few things that work real well. Old bike parts can work out quite nicely. You can do a number of things with bicycle sprockets. Okay. Philosophicat is in the house. Yeah, there's some, I think it's Arrow something, and I just pulled it out of a box, and I remember you mentioning that you were reading it, and so I set it aside, and I will. All right. Let's see here. JR, Semiagog, are you a Vargtard? I'm not sure what that means. If it means, do I watch the channel of the guy named Varg? No, I don't, but I have watched it. I've seen it one or 2 or 3 clips on it, and I don't mind him one way or another. And generally, I don't like to talk shit about anyone. And I never talk shit about people that I've done clips with or who've had me as guests. The only person I will talk shit about is Richard Spencer. All right. Am I in live chat? I'm in top chat. All right. I just switched it back. Oh my God. All right. Am I black-pilled about the future? Asks Krieg Skulder. Well, yeah, because I'm going to die. But, that's the nature of the experiment. Nick asks if Russia attacked Turkey from the rear, do you think Greece would help? Bruce McGrew says, love Iggy Pop. Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of that Detroit stuff. Is it MC5, I want to say? Yeah, there's quite a bit of that's good. That is good. Am I familiar with Vox Day? Yeah, and I don't want to talk shit about him. He seems like an interesting guy, but maybe not as interesting as he could be. Which country has the ugliest people? Whew. I would have to say probably Brazil has the ugliest people in the world, but they also have the most beautiful people in the world, or some of them. So it can go either way. Joanna Knoll says it's 3:30. I'm way to bed. Joanna Knoll, good night. Storm of Steel asks, how old are you? I am 47 and a half. All right. Semi-Agog, what about a center for your family house movement? I would consider buying a big ass piece of land and parceling it out and or sharing it with close friends of mine so that we can support each other. But I'm not real big into forming a commune or whatever. Semi-Agog, is Christianity good or bad for Western civilization? Yes. Greece would slip through the Bosphorus and retake Constantinople. Yeah. Funny people. Okay, I think I just made my camera go blurry. Oh, shit. Fuck, that's what happens when you pound on the tabletop. Come back. Come back. Focus. Focus. Oh, I'm blurry. I'm turning into a ghost. I'm turning into a ghost. God, will this not fucking focus? Focus. I need to hold up something with a sharp edge. Is that a sharp edge? Will that focus? Oh, shit. You guys are just going to have to look at me blurry. There we go. Okay. Where did my chat window go? There is no Western civilization without Christianity. Well, there would certainly be no Western civilization of the sort that we enjoy today without Christianity. And there is quite a bit about Christianity that is well worth everyone's attention. Well worth everyone's attention. Nicholas of Cusa. Ooh, Hugh of St. Victor. Richard of St. Victor. All right. What else do we have? Philosophicat. How would you characterize your spiritual beliefs if you subscribe to any? Pantheist, one of a hidden religion. I believe that all of the substance of existence is God stuff because there's nothing else to make anything out of, and that that it's all consciousness of various kinds, and that when one sees the whole move, every part of it stands still. That would be a clip in and of itself, but essentially I believe that, what's an easy way to say it? Everything that we might experience in dreams or in our imagination, the imagery in the soul, you know, the kind of stuff that you see in dreams or visions that sometimes we brush up against in our imagination, that everything that we are, this material that we're made of, is the imagination of God. But what makes our imagination, or our imaginal, as it were, different from God's, is that we did not give the gift. We did not breathe on the clay and say, be, because we have not projected the gift colorless and clear to our own interior in the way that whatever God is did to or with itself. And so we are not real in the same way. Or another way of saying it is that we only exist insofar as we polish the mirror to reflect better what actually is, and that there is a moment that can come at which point that which we reflect of God stuff comes to life in the mirror and multiplies infinity by itself, at which point our interior becomes as real for its own inhabitants as we feel we are real within the imaginal realm of God's memory. I wasn't ready for that, and I generally try to avoid, as I told Jared one night, I don't like to talk about God when I'm drinking, and it's not because I am concerned about being sacrilegious. It's just because when I drink, I can't think and follow that kind of stuff as well. Okay. What else do we have here? What is the ideal topography for a people? People think mountains make strength, but it also seems that virgin tribes hide to mountains and Chads. Virgin tribes hide in the mountains and Chads dominate the steppes. Steppes are hard ass places. There's nothing to protect you from the storms. There's nothing to protect you from the winds. There's nothing to protect you from the dust. There are arguments that epicanthic folds formed in order to deal with the dust on the steppes. Yeah, steppes are outrageously rough and difficult, and mountains are very rough and difficult. I like to be in foothills or near mountains. I've mentioned before that the zone of the country where I feel like I'm not away from my place is when I'm kind of in the foothills, in the Appalachians or in the foothills of the Appalachians, which means anywhere basically from roughly Virginia down to Georgia is kind of my zone. And that's my ideal topography. I just like it. I grew up around it. Natty Z says, do you see anything prophetic about Atlas Shrugged? I haven't read old Ayn Rand, so I don't know. Philosopher Cat says it'd be an interesting topic for a video sometime if it's too much to answer here. Yes, well, I think Tim and I will be discussing the natural memory at some point, which will entail consideration of some of these things, I think. Margie asks, so what happens at death? I think what happens at death is that we no longer have this artificial set of training wheels, this flesh that we occupy. This gives us artificially the ability to have a subject-object relationship with our environment. So because I occupy this flesh, which is a gift of God, and that's not a he behind the clouds with glowing lights. It's an it that is far more vast and incomprehensible than any group of opposites that we could try to force into collision, into the point of paradox. So at the point of death, we no longer have this. But this is training wheels, which allows us to create space within our interior because we have two eyes, we have depth perception. Because we have two ears, we triangulate sound. We require space in order to orient ourselves. And again, two ears, two eyes, any number of other things, proprioception. All these things give us an experience of having space, and it acts like the needle that used to cut the old Victrola records. A lot of people don't understand in the old days, you'd have the sound go in the horn and it would make the needle vibrate and it would cut the old 78 RPM discs. And then you could just play them back and they would make the needle vibrate in the same way they originally did, and it would come out the horn and you'd hear the music. Well, we have training wheels to fake a kind of space within us. We can walk within the garden, so to speak, and experience space and manifestation as a gift of God through this vehicle, which is also a gift of God. This is not ours. This goes away. Every morning when I get up and look in the mirror, I'm reminded that it goes away. And yet we write, so to speak, upon our interior, or mold it or shape it or bring it to life. Gardens and landscapes, all the weird scenes we see in our dreams, the friends who have 20 different faces, the sequences that seem to come back around again full circle. So the beginning of the dream is also its end at the moment that we wake up. We write a kind of interior into ourselves. And that is the secret. Because once we have the creation of space, which we learn through the training wheels of experience with this gift of God, that interior can come to life. And at some point, even give us a place to stand so that some aspect or piece of us can remain even when the body is dissolved. But again, I'm drinking. Nick says another whiskey and you'll have it, Oliver. By God, I will. Okay. Let's see here. Massamink says hi. Love your topics. Thank you very much. Okay, I am lost in here. We have 20 minutes left, 21 minutes left. Alfonso Soroka asks, do you think it's worthwhile to create a Tonga housemark type symbol and passing it on in the hopes that we can restart the process? Yeah, to whatever degree it's conscious. And it's certainly interesting to get involved with just in terms of education and learning something new. All right. Binary epidemic, where do you actually live? In the heart of the Southeast. What else? Philosophy Cat says, what do you think is the role of music or other art in culture? Well, man, you can go into that. I mean, it tames the wild beast. There's the idea of the music of the spheres. There are Pythagorean experiments with the monochord. And there's a thing Tim used to talk to me about, which he said, if you can listen, the dream landscapes have their own music. There is a music that comes out of interior imagery. And likewise, when you listen to music, it will conjure interior imagery. It's central. And I actually want to do a discussion about it. I've got a friend who's an ethnomusicologist, and he has given quite a bit of thought to music in relation to ritual and how music and ritual relate to religious experience, unmediated, bottom up instead of top down type stuff. But that's another, yeah, man, Philosophy Cat, you're asking the big questions, the big questions. I'll have to inch my way into those slowly. I'm getting old. I'm not as strong as I once was, or at least not as brash, and I'm unconcerned about the possible results of misspeaking. All right. Wow, conflagrans in sanguine anglorum is here. All kinds of shit's about to break loose. Margie, Semigod, can you recommend a book that explains your ideas of life and death? Something introductory. Yeah. What's it called? There's a bunch of Henry Corbin stuff, but it's not going to be introductory for you. No, you kind of have to put the piece. No, not that's introductory. You might take a look. And I'm certainly not claiming that it's worth your time. You'll be you'll be the decider of that. I'm the decider. Sorry, I'm going down to shrub the younger bush. There's a clip on death, at least one. I think there are probably two, but at least one that I did in discussion with Tim that might be useful to you. I'm sorry, I can't answer better. I'd have to give some thought to that. And while I was thinking about it and navel gazing, you guys would all be like, why are we watching this live stream? So let us see here. And harmony. Oh, yes, harmony. Let us see here. 432 hertz. I don't know. And what are you guys talking about gin for? Oh my God. All the times, the only thing I make more of an ass of myself after drinking. I can't even speak now. The only thing worse in terms of me being presentable to the public than gin is tequila. I used to drink a lot of gin. I'm old now. Calmly, softly, carefully. All right. So, yeah, God, I want to say that I know something about ideas of life and death. Art of Memory, the Henri Corbin books. That's a hard one, man. That's a hard one. More questions, people. Yes, we're still on live chat, Waterpenny. Yes, we are. Gin equals fight. Tequila equals naked fight. I have seen more strippers I can't say show their asses, can I? I've seen more strippers behave badly as a result of tequila than any of you ever wanted to know. Semigog, on a scale of 1 to 11, how degenerate would you say you are? Degenerate. I love the reintroduction of that term. I once would have been a solid 9, probably. I think I backed off. I'm around 7 now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have 16 minutes left. That's probably a good amount of time for like 2 final solid questions. All right. How many smokes am I down to a day? I am down to 10, but sometimes I'm naughty and I smoke 11. But for the most part, I'm down to 10 a day. And soon, within another month or so, I'm going to squeeze it down to 8. Ugh. It's going to be hard. Wanna doses. Wanna. That E at the end fucks me up. Juana. It sounds like someone's selling me acid. Juana dose. Juana dose, man. Mulatto, like, what is going on here, people? What do I think of the Internet of Things being pushed? Oh, that's from Prism. I've been looking into that quite a bit. And you guys have no fucking idea how much the Eye of Sauron is going to be gazing up all your asses, man. The Internet of Things stuff is just insane. And it hasn't even begun yet. It has not even begun yet. It's going to be crazy. The last 3 projects I did with clients had to do with developing products and systems for, I don't know, taking advantage of Internet of Things stuff. All right, Semigog, what do you think is one of the most critical things our people need to do to forge a way forward to a positive future? Individual development in cooperation. Individual development in cooperation. And individual development in cooperation. I dig that. I'm willing to, accept that cooperation is required, and I understand that you shouldn't reject help or the idea that you share important things with others and that you can work together. But I remain so solidly individualist that, and it comes down to each one of us. It's like Voltaire said at the end of Candide. Cultivate your own garden. Gavin Baker, who's the single most influential author or thinker in your life? Single most. I'm going to dodge that one by saying I agree with Christian League saying read old books. God, you can put me down to a single I can't answer. I mean, I had all kinds of sparks fly when I was reading Nietzsche, but I didn't do that until I was about 33 or something. I don't know, somewhere in there. Ibn al-Arabi, old Muslim Sufi thinkers. Henri Corbin was a big one. Francis Yates was a big one. Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard one. When you say single most, that makes it rough. Favorite classic novel? I don't really like any classic novels. I always read sci-fi and stuff. And I'd have to give that some thought. I think I just have stopped reading fiction. For the most part, I've just stopped. But I do it again. I mean, when I read fiction, I kind of picked up Tim's thing. He's always like, just turn off the forebrain, let it chew. And like he does things where he goes through a whole course of reading. And he'll read like, I don't know, 15, 20, 50, 100 books, literally. And he'll go through that sequence, and then he wants to, so to speak, gestate on it. And so what he does is he pulls out like Nora Roberts and Thomas Harris and shit, and he'll like put away all of the serious books, and then he'll just occupy what he calls his forebrain, reading the trash fiction. And then after a month or two, or I don't know, a week or two, depending on what he's chewing on, as I understand it, he'll come back to the idea, because you have to turn off the forebrain, so to speak, allow the unconscious to work on it without distraction, and then come back to it. So yeah, I sometimes read like, sci-fi, and like everybody's waiting for that fucking Patrick Rothfuss you know, follow-up sci-fi book to finally appear. It's never going to happen. I think I read Anthem, which was just shit. I fucked up and read American Gods, and like I'll never touch that author again. He's such a piece of shit. Let's see here. What else do we have? Juanadosis says, I think your channel is awesome. Well, thank you very much. Anna Karenina is great. I read it recently. I think I will read some of the Dostoevsky. I will do that. And I read like Le Liaison Dangereuse. You know, I don't know. Actually, that's fair. I like Boccaccio, the Decameron. I enjoyed what I have read thus far of the Divine Comedy. I just couldn't read into Paradiso. I've read The Inferno probably 10 times in different translations. I read The Purgatory once, and I just couldn't read. I've got to get older. Something's got to change in my soul before I can read Paradiso. Yeah, lots of those. Don Quixote is great. I tend to like older stuff. Apuleius, the Golden Ass, you know. Okay. Try reading Faust by Goethe. Yes, I should. Have I read any Philip K. Dick? Yes, I'm surrounded by kibble. Yes, I'm surrounded by kibble. Do androids dream of electric sheep? Let's see here. Do I have a P.O. box yet? No, not yet. They're all taken up at my damn post office. Any thought on JBP being denied a Cambridge audience? I don't dislike Jordan B. Peterson as much as everybody else does, but by the same token, I'm not that excited by him. Borges, thank you. Mr. Ixme, thank you. Yes, I literally, I can't even get the titles. Terra Clam ut Orbis, you know, the Garden of Forking Paths. Borges. And he's got some great poetry that he wrote when he got when he went blind, because he could only compose poems at lengths that he could keep in his memory. I read Danielle Steele novels by candlelight. Wow. That cosmology was a hard swallow. I'm not sure what that means. Just relax your throat. Okay. I'm glad you cleaned your room. No. Yes, I am conflagrans in sanguine angelorum. Yes, I'm sitting on 8,100 or 8,200 subs for months. They just every time, literally every time like I get 15 new subscribers, then the next day 15 subscribers disappear. I don't want to go all conspiracy theory. I don't want to go all Alex Jones on you, but seriously, like they shave them off. They're gone. They're gone. My favorite Metal Gear Solid game. I have no such thing. The last video game I seriously played was like Quake 3 and Half-Life. That's it. All right, people, we got 8 minutes left. It's up to you. What do you have for us? This is it. We're heading down the home stretch. Ugh. We have got to come up with one last good question. And so it's up to all of you. What will it be? God damn it, I went blurry again. Here's a card. Here's a card. Go ahead, focus, bitch. There we go. Focus. Focus. Very good. See those sharp rectilinear edges. Okay. Agenda 21. I don't know what that is. Serrano. No, I have not read Serrano. I'm not sure what that is. Agenda 21, I haven't read it. I have not read it. Now I feel ashamed because Mr. Ixme asked me and I didn't know it. Do I have a favorite hangover remedy? Yes, lots of greasy meat, huge amounts of water. You take 2 aspirin before you go to bed. So yeah, this is how it works out. You think you're going to be hungover, so you take 2 aspirin when you're getting into bed. You drink literally as much water as you can get into your stomach. And that'll force you to get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, and then you drink more water, then you go to bed again. You get up in the morning and you have plenty of greasy meat. but I don't drink much anymore. Okay. Will the bunting clover be established? I don't know what that means. This sounds like all these sneaky secret people are asking me coded questions. I've never felt so ignorant. Scarlett Johansson is the hottest woman alive, yes or no? I would have said she was kind of cute because she has that just a little bit too ripe, about to fall off the vine kind of look to her. But as soon as she opened her dumb fucking mouth, I decided I just can't have that. It used to be when I was a young lad that it didn't really matter what the woman said, but now it really matters. They open their mouth and they sound like a fucking idiot, and I'm like, check, please. All right. Jehovah's Witnesses. From Standard Mail, thoughts on Jehovah's Witnesses. Treated as extremist in Russia. Should any religious organization that imposes their views be shut down? I don't know. It depends on the views. It depends on the religious organization, and it depends on how you define shut down. I will say this, that I met a number of Jehovah's Witnesses because I had a business partner whose family was that way, and they were all crazy. There's nothing like Jehovah's Witnesses when they like go off the reservation. They're insane. They're fucking insane. But if you want to meet very, very white women who are a little bit fucked up and very sexually wild, then find yourself some Joho chicks who are recently off the reservation. But I don't know. I didn't have it in my family. I don't know much about the ideology except that they're chosen people. Hypothetically, from Christian League, if Americans were to realize that Israel did 9/11, would the reaction be less than or worse than the reaction of Germany in the 30s? I don't know, man. There's some weird pressure building there, and we'll just have to see how it blows. And doesn't it always just blow? Conflagrans and sanguine angelorum. Do you believe the Civil War was orchestrated, started by hidden forces, and that we were fed lies about it all? Everything is always orchestrated and started by hidden forces, even if only partly, and we're always lied to about everything, so yes. Storm of Steel, good to know. Joho Witnesses, here I come. John Ski in the house. Why does the left seem to live in their own make-believe world even when it goes against real science and facts? Because they're fucking fags. There's that level 7 degeneracy coming out. Hey, I am reformed. I am reformed. I'm talking about what happened in my youth. I'm an old man now. I can't be bothered with that bullshit. Yes, indeed. All right. I just saw that Mr. Ixme is being a moderator. They probably take everything a little more seriously than I do, but I appreciate that I have moderators. Especially ones who take things more seriously than I do. All right. We are about to close, 11:58. ETA on your project on the Jewish questions. It's pretty much written up. I'll tell you, that's from Fiend J. I have it all together, and I just keep like, it's not going to be final, and I keep wanting it to be final, and then I go looking at it, and then I'm like, oh my God, there's something else, and I'm going to have to come up with some way of saying that this is not my final word on the thing, and then just get it out. Philosophy Cat, you said you're level 7 now, though. Well, yeah, that's reformed. That's very reformed, and that's yes. I'm already going to get in trouble. That's it. How Jewish is Freemasonry? I don't know. Are my moderators Goyim? No. Oh, that's why I love Mr. Ixme. Oh, the irony is perfect. Have I stopped smoking? No, I'm still on 10 minutes, 10 cigarettes a day. I'm still laughing at Mr. Thoughts on if you'll ever have kids, Sally? Don't you have a primal urge to reproduce? Yes, absolutely. I want to have kids, but I am so particular. I am not going to do it. The woman is the key to fucking everything. Woman is the key to everything. You have to have a fucking righteous woman, because you don't really matter until they get to be about 6 or 7. And even afterwards, you're going to be secondary. And the quality of the woman doesn't only matter vis-a-vis the children, but you have to have the finest, fucking most righteous woman, because she's going to love you, but then the kids are going to come, and necessarily she must love them more, which means she's got to be a pretty fucking righteous human being to still have any time for you and the cute little way that you get on and get off once the children come. And I refuse to get involved in sending off some single fucking mother and not raising a child. It happened to me. I will not do it again. So either I will meet a righteous fucking woman and it will be solid, or I'm not going to waste my time. All right. Oh shit, it's midnight. Fuck. That means I have to go. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all very, very much for so patiently indulging and listening to all my bullshit. I've had 2 whiskeys now, and I need to go and have another cigarette. You are all fucking wonderful people. Please do make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. As I said, everybody is being kicked off. God damn, fucking God. Come into focus, man. I can't say good night dramatically without being in focus. There we go. That'll do. Thank you very much, one and all, for watching the channel. Thanks to my supporters who help out with Subscribe Star and GoFundMe. All of the credit and none of the blame. Do make sure you are subscribed. I apologize for getting the stream started a little bit late. Again, all of you rock und roll. You are the best. And I love the fact that you are watching my channel. And now I will say good night. And like Arnold, I will say,